The man who walked into Marcus's gym wasn't there to train. Three-piece suit, gold watch, the kind of cold eyes that had seen violence and enjoyed it. "Mr. Thompson, I'm here to recruit some of your talented students for a private competition. Very lucrative. I'm sure they could use the money." Marcus had dealt with predators before, in boot camp, in combat zones, in the streets. He recognized the threat beneath the polite words. "They're kids. Not for sale," the man smiled. "Everything's for sale, Mr. Thompson, and everyone has a price. I'll be back when you're ready to negotiate." He left a business card. The pit, where champions are made. Marcus knew exactly what kind of champions they were making, and he was about to shut them down. Welcome to Open Book Stories. Before we begin this powerful tale of exploitation, stopped, youth protected, and a Marine who never stopped fighting for his recruits, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. Thompson's boxing gym sat on the corner of Gratiot Avenue and Mint Elliott in Detroit's East Side. The building was old, a former auto parts warehouse with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and windows that let in the kind of natural light that made the space feel bigger than it was. Marcus Thompson had bought it 8 years ago with his military savings and a small business loan. He'd renovated it himself, installed the ring, hung the heavy bags, built the locker rooms, painted the walls a clean white that made the space feel hopeful instead of gritty. The sign outside was simple. Thompson's Boxing, Youth Program. All welcome. Marcus was 46 years old. Built like the Marine drill instructor he'd been for 12 years before retiring. 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle that had softened slightly, but never weakened. His head was shaved clean, his dark skin marked with scars from 2 deployments in Iraq and countless training exercises. But it was his eyes that defined him. Steady, assessing, the kind that missed nothing. Eyes that could see potential in a troubled kid or spot a threat walking through the door. The gym was his life now. He opened at 5 a.m. for adult training, then ran youth programs from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. every weekday. Weekends were for tournaments, community events, and the kind of mentorship that extended beyond boxing. Marcus didn't just teach kids to fight. He taught them discipline, respect, self-control. He taught them that strength without purpose was just violence. That real power came from knowing when not to throw a punch. His students came from tough neighborhoods, kids who'd seen violence, poverty, broken families. Boxing gave them structure, gave them a place to channel anger into something constructive. Marcus had trained over 300 kids in 8 years. Some went on to competitive boxing. Most just learned discipline and confidence that changed their trajectories. This was what Marcus had left the Marines to build. A sanctuary, a place where young people could become stronger versions of themselves, until the man in the 3-piece suit walked in and threatened to turn it into a hunting ground. It was a Tuesday evening, about 8:30 p.m. Most of the kids had gone home. Only a few older teens remained. DeShawn Williams working the speed bag, Jamal Foster doing mitt work with Marcus's assistant coach, and twins Andre and Antoine doing conditioning drills. The man entered without knocking, his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete floor. He was mid-40s, white, with slicked-back hair, and the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. Marcus was wrapping up Jamal's hands for the next round when he noticed the stranger. Everything about the man was wrong for this environment. Too clean, too expensive, too predatory. "We're closing soon," Marcus called out. "If you're looking to train, come back tomorrow morning." "I'm not here to train." The man approached the ring where Marcus stood. "I'm here to make you a business proposition." Marcus's military instincts activated immediately. Threat assessment. The man's posture suggested no physical training, but his eyes suggested extensive experience with violence, just not the kind he participated in personally. "I don't do business after hours. Leave your card. I'll call you." This conversation is best had in person. The man extended his hand. "Vincent Caruso. I represent an organization that hosts private competitive events. Very exclusive, very lucrative." Marcus didn't shake his hand. "What kind of events?" "Fighting. Real fighting. Not this amateur hour play fighting." Caruso gestured dismissively at the gym. "We're looking for talented young fighters who are willing to compete at the highest level. The winners make serious money, life-changing money." The teenagers had stopped training, watching the exchange with interest. Marcus caught DeShawn's eye and jerked his head toward the locker room. "You guys are done for tonight. Hit the showers." "But coach, we still got 20 minutes." "Now." The authority in Marcus's voice, the drill instructor tone that brooked no argument, sent them moving. Once the kids were out of earshot, Marcus turned back to Caruso. "My students aren't for sale. Everyone's for sale. Mr. Thompson, it's just a matter of price." Caruso pulled out a business card, set it on the edge of the ring. "These kids come from poverty, single-parent homes. No college prospects. You're teaching them skills, but giving them no way to monetize those skills. I'm offering opportunity. You're offering exploitation. I'm offering $10,000 per fight, win or lose, with bonuses for knockouts." Caruso smiled. "How many of your students could use that kind of money? How many families are struggling to keep lights on, to put food on tables?" Marcus had seen recruiters like this before. In Iraq, insurgents would target young men with similar pitches: money, purpose, belonging. The tactics were universal. Find the vulnerable, offer solutions, exploit ruthlessly. "Get out of my gym." "I'll leave, but I'll be back." Caruso headed for the door, then turned. "Your best students, DeShawn Williams, Jamal Foster, the Torres twins, they're exactly what we're looking for. You can either help them take advantage of this opportunity, or they'll find their way to us anyway. Young men always do when money's involved. If you come near my students, we're going to have a problem." Caruso's smile widened. "Mr. Thompson, I represent people who own half this city. We have judges, cops, politicians on payroll. You're a gym owner in a bad neighborhood, trying to save kids who don't want to be saved. Don't make this personal." He left, and Marcus stood alone in the empty gym, staring at the business card. The pit, where champions are made, with an address in an industrial area Marcus knew was controlled by organized crime. This wasn't a business proposition. It was a threat. And Marcus had learned in the Marines that threats needed to be addressed before they became actions. Marcus spent the next morning doing research. Vincent Caruso's name came up in several contexts, none of them legal. He'd been investigated for racketeering, human trafficking, and illegal gambling, but never convicted. The kind of operator who stayed insulated from direct crimes through layers of intermediaries. The Pit was an underground fighting operation that had been running for 3 years. Local media had done some reporting. Unregulated fights, no safety measures, Fighters seriously injured with no medical care. But without direct evidence or willing witnesses, law enforcement couldn't shut it down. Marcus called an old contact from his Marine days, Carl Jackson, now a detective with Detroit PD. They'd served together in Fallujah, had stayed in touch after separation. Carl, I need information on an organization called The Pit. Why are you asking about that? Carl's tone was immediately cautious. Someone tried to recruit my students. Guy named Vincent Caruso. Carl swore softly. Marcus, stay away from this. The Pit is connected to serious people. We've been trying to build a case for 2 years, but every witness disappears or recants. What are they doing exactly? Recruiting kids, mostly from poor neighborhoods, promising money. Then forcing them to fight in brutal matches. No rules, no rounds. Fights continue until someone can't stand up. The kids sign contracts that are basically indentured servitude. They owe money for training and housing, can't leave until the debt is paid, but the debt keeps growing. That's slavery. That's what we think too. But proving it in court when everyone's too scared to testify is another matter. Carl paused. How serious was this recruitment attempt? Caruso came to my gym, named specific students, made it clear he'd be back. Said his organization owns half the city. He's not exaggerating. The Pit's backed by the Moretti crime family. They've been untouchable for decades. Carl's voice softened. Marcus, I know you. I know what you're thinking. Don't. Call me if Caruso comes back, but don't go looking for trouble. Marcus thanked him and hung up. Then he immediately started planning how to find trouble. That evening, Marcus kept the gym open late, watching his students train. DeShawn, Jamal, Andre, Antoine, all of them talented, all of them from families struggling financially. Exactly the profile Caruso had described. After training ended, Marcus pulled DeShawn aside. The kid was 17, senior year at Southeastern High, with legitimate boxing talent. He'd won the Golden Gloves in his weight class, had scholarship offers from 2 colleges with boxing programs. DeShawn, has anyone approached you about fighting outside the gym? Unofficial matches? Money involved? The teenager's face went carefully neutral. No, coach. Why? Marcus recognized the tell. DeShawn was lying. Someone came by yesterday trying to recruit you and the others. If they approach you directly, I need you to tell me immediately. What kind of recruitment? The kind that gets kids hurt. Promise me you'll come to me first before you make any decisions about fighting outside this gym. DeShawn hesitated, then nodded. I promise, coach. But Marcus saw the conflict in the boy's eyes. DeShawn's mother worked 2 jobs. His younger siblings needed clothes and food. $10,000 per fight would be transformative for his family. Marcus understood the temptation. He'd grown up in similar poverty, had joined the Marines partially for the steady paycheck, but he'd also seen what happened when desperation led to bad decisions. He needed to shut down the Pit before Caruso could get hooks into his students, which meant going on the offensive. Marcus spent the next 3 days conducting surveillance on the address from Caruso's business card. The location was in an industrial area near the Detroit River. Abandoned factories, warehouses, the kind of neighborhood where no one asked questions. The Pit operated out of a converted warehouse. From the outside, it looked abandoned. But Marcus noticed the security cameras, the reinforced doors, the expensive cars that arrived after dark. On Friday night, Marcus watched from a concealed position as about 40 people arrived between 10 p.m. and midnight. Expensive vehicles, wealthy clientele. and 4 young fighters, all teenagers, all looking nervous and afraid. Marcus recognized one of them. Tommy Rodriguez, a kid who trained at his gym 3 years ago before moving away. Tommy had aged badly. Visible scars, a limp, the hollow eyes of someone who'd seen too much. At 1 a.m., the crowd began leaving. Marcus waited until the warehouse was dark, then approached for a closer look. His Marine training included reconnaissance and infiltration. Marcus had conducted building assessments in hostile territory, had learned to gather intelligence without being detected. An abandoned warehouse in Detroit was far less challenging than an insurgent compound in Fallujah. He found a side entrance with a faulty lock, slipped inside, and began documenting everything with his phone camera. The main floor had been converted into a fighting pit, literally a pit, dug several feet below floor level with concrete walls. No ring, no ropes, no safety measures, just a hole where fighters could be trapped and forced to fight. Around the pit were bleacher seats for spectators. But more disturbing was the equipment Marcus found in the back rooms. Medical supplies for treating injuries without hospital visits. Cages, actual cages, where fighters were apparently kept between matches. Training equipment that looked more like torture devices, and most damning, contracts. Marcus photographed several, seeing exactly what Carl had described. Fighters signed agreements for training and management, taking on debt that could never realistically be repaid. The legal language was designed to appear legitimate while functioning as indentured servitude. Marcus was photographing the contracts when he heard voices. 2 men entering through the front. Security check, probably. He moved quickly, slipping into one of the back rooms and hiding in a supply closet. Through the crack in the door, he watched 2 men walk through, checking the space. "Boss wants extra security for tomorrow's main event," one was saying. "Big money bout." That Williams kid from the east side finally agreed to fight. Marcus's blood went cold. DeShawn. They had DeShawn. He's good. Could make us a lot of money if we can keep him long enough. Boss says to make sure he understands the contract after he signs it. They left, and Marcus waited 10 more minutes before exiting. His mind was racing. DeShawn had promised to come to him first, but apparently the money had been too tempting. The kid had no idea what he was signing up for. Marcus had to move fast. The fight was tomorrow night, which meant DeShawn had probably already signed the contract and taken an advance payment. Getting him out before the fight would be nearly impossible, unless Marcus made it impossible for the fight to happen. Marcus went home and planned his operation like a military mission. Objective: extract DeShawn before the fight. Secondary objective: gather enough evidence to shut down the pit permanently. Constraints: operating alone against unknown numbers in hostile territory. In the Marines, this would be a squad-level operation minimum. Marcus had himself, but he also had surprise, superior training, and the motivation that came from protecting one of his kids. Saturday afternoon, Marcus called DeShawn's mother, confirming what he'd suspected. DeShawn had come home 2 days ago with $1,000 cash. Said he'd gotten a construction job. Mrs. Williams had been relieved and grateful, not questioning where a teenager would get that kind of money legitimately. Marcus didn't tell her the truth yet. No reason to panic her before he'd secured her son's safety. At 10 p.m., Marcus drove to the pit, parking 3 blocks away. He was dressed in dark clothing, carrying a small pack with equipment, zip ties, his phone, a tactical flashlight, and the Marine K-bar knife he'd kept from his service days. Not planning to use it, but preparedness was survival. The warehouse was already active, cars arriving, money changing hands at the door. Marcus bypassed the front entirely, using the side entrance he'd found during reconnaissance. Inside, the warehouse was lit by industrial lights hung above the pit. About 60 spectators filled the bleachers, all men, all wealthy based on their clothing and watches. They were drinking, laughing, treating this like entertainment. In a holding area beside the pit, Marcus saw 4 fighters. DeShawn was one of them, wearing only athletic shorts, his hands wrapped. Next to him was a much larger opponent, mid-20s, covered in scars with the dead eyes of someone who'd been fighting for survival too long. This wasn't a fair match. This was designed to hurt DeShawn badly enough that he'd be trapped in the system, owing medical debt on top of his existing contract. Marcus moved through the shadows toward the holding area. He needed to get DeShawn out before the fight started, which meant creating a distraction large enough to pull security away. The warehouse had old electrical systems, exposed wiring, and plenty of flammable materials. Marcus wasn't planning to burn the building down, too much risk of casualties, but he could create enough smoke and chaos to trigger an evacuation. He found the electrical panel in a back room, studied it for 30 seconds, then pulled several breakers in sequence. The lights cut out immediately, plunging the warehouse into darkness except for emergency exit signs. Shouting erupted from the main floor. Security guards moved toward the electrical room with flashlights. Marcus was already moving in the opposite direction toward the holding area. He found DeShawn in the dark, grabbed the boy's arm. "It's Coach. Come with me. Now." "Coach? What are you—" "No time. Your fight isn't happening. Move." Marcus pulled DeShawn toward the exit, but they only made it 20 feet before someone blocked their path. Even in the darkness, Marcus recognized the silhouette. "Vincent Caruso. Mr. Thompson. I told you we'd have a problem if you interfered." Lights came back on. Someone had found a backup generator. Marcus and DeShawn were trapped in the middle of the warehouse floor, surrounded by security guards. 6 men, all armed with weapons Marcus recognized as firearms concealed under jackets. The spectators were evacuating, shouting complaints about refunds. But Caruso remained calm, standing with his security detail. "I gave you a choice," Caruso said. "Cooperate and profit, or interfere and pay the price. You chose poorly." "This kid signed a contract under duress," Marcus replied, keeping DeShawn behind him. "It's not legally binding. You have no claim on him." "That's not your decision to make. Mr. Williams took a substantial advance payment. He owes us a performance. I'll pay back the money." "He's not fighting," Caruso smiled. "The money's not the point. The point is sending a message. No one walks away from the pit. Mr. Williams fights, or he and his family face consequences." Marcus had heard enough. His Marine training included threat assessment and force escalation. 6 armed men in a warehouse with civilians nearby. This couldn't be resolved through diplomacy. "DeShawn," Marcus said quietly. "When I move, you run for that exit. Don't stop. Don't look back. Coach, they have guns." "I know. Trust me." Marcus had fought in Fallujah, had survived ambushes and close-quarters combat. These were security guards, probably ex-cops or military themselves, but they weren't expecting a 56-year-old gym owner to be a trained operator. Their mistake. Marcus moved. He covered the distance to the nearest guard in 3 steps, using the close-quarters combat techniques he'd drilled into thousands of Marines. Disarm, disable, move to next target. The guard's weapon was in Marcus's hand before the man processed what was happening. Marcus wasn't shooting. Too much risk with bystanders, but having the weapon gave him control. He used it as a club, striking the second guard's arm, sending that gun clattering across the floor. The remaining 4 guards drew their weapons. Marcus had DeShawn behind cover now, a concrete pillar that provided protection. "Stay down," Marcus ordered the boy, then addressed Caruso. "I'm walking out of here with my student. Anyone tries to stop me, people get hurt." Caruso looked more interested than afraid. "You're former military. I should have done better research on you, Mr. Thompson, but you're outgunned and outnumbered. This ends one way." "You're right about that." Marcus's voice was calm, the same tone he'd used in combat zones. "Call your men off, or I demonstrate what Marine Force recon training looks like in close quarters." "Your choice." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Tommy Rodriguez, the scarred fighter Marcus had seen earlier, did something unexpected. He stepped between Marcus and the guards. "Coach Thompson? From the gym on Gratiot?" Marcus recognized him now up close. "Tommy. Been a long time. I've been fighting here for 3 years, Coach. Can't get out. They own me," Tommy's voice cracked. "But you got me started in boxing. Taught me discipline and honor. I'm not letting them take another kid." Tommy turned to face Caruso and the guards. "You want to shoot Coach Thompson? You shoot through me first." The other 3 fighters, all teenagers, all visibly terrified, exchanged glances. Then they moved to stand with Tommy. 4 fighters between Marcus and the guns. 4 kids who'd been exploited, who'd been broken, now choosing to stand up. Caruso's confidence wavered. His operation depended on fear and control. If the fighters started resisting, the entire system collapsed. "You're all making a mistake," Caruso said. "There are consequences." The warehouse doors burst open. Detroit police, a dozen officers with weapons drawn, led by Detective Carl Jackson. Detroit PD. "Everyone on the ground." Turned out Carl had been following Marcus's surveillance for days, waiting for the right moment to move. When Marcus had sent him photos of the contracts and cage equipment earlier that evening, Carl had secured a warrant and assembled a team. The timing of the raid, just as the confrontation reached its peak, was either perfect planning or incredible. Luck, Vincent Caruso and his security team were arrested. The fighters were taken into protective custody. The warehouse was seized as a crime scene. Marcus sat in the back of an ambulance with DeShawn, both of them being checked by paramedics, even though neither was seriously hurt. "Coach, I'm sorry," DeShawn said for the 5th time. "I know I promised. But my mom needed help with rent, and my sister needed—" "I know." Marcus put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I understand why you did it. But you need to understand what you almost got into. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a trap. Mr. Thompson?" Carl approached, notebook in hand. "Need your statement." Marcus walked through the evening's events. Breaking and entering, vigilante action, assault. Technically, Marcus had broken several laws, but Carl was writing it up as citizen intervention in an active crime scene. "You should have called me instead of going in alone," Carl said. "Would you have moved fast enough to stop tonight's fight?" Carl didn't answer, which was answer enough. Tommy Rodriguez approached as Marcus was finishing his statement. The young man looked older than his 20 years, carrying the weight of 3 years of exploitation. "Coach, I need help getting out of this. The debt, the contract. That contract's not worth the paper it's printed on. FBI's taking over the case. They'll help you." Marcus studied Tommy's scarred face, the permanent damage from years of unregulated fighting. But you're going to need more than legal help. Medical care, counseling, job training. You interested in coming back to the gym? I can't fight anymore, coach. Too much damage. I'm not talking about fighting. I'm talking about helping me train the next generation. Show them what happens when they make bad choices. Help them make better ones. You've earned knowledge the hard way. Time to pass it on. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that, coach. DeShawn's mother arrived in a panic, folding her son into her arms and weeping with relief. Marcus spoke with her briefly, explaining what had happened, promising that DeShawn was safe now. Mr. Thompson, I don't know how to thank you, Mrs. Williams said. Raise a good man. That's thanks enough. Vincent Caruso's trial began 3 months later. The prosecution had overwhelming evidence: the contracts, the cage equipment, testimony from 30 fighters who'd been exploited, financial records showing millions in illegal gambling proceeds. But most powerful was Tommy Rodriguez's testimony. He spent 4 hours on the stand describing in detail what the pit had done to him and others. The scars, the injuries, the debt trap, the fear. Marcus sat in the courtroom gallery, watching the jury's faces. They believed every word. Caruso was convicted on 17 counts, including human trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy. Sentenced to 25 years federal prison. The Moretti crime family tried to distance themselves, but the FBI's investigation had expanded, taking down several connected operations. The pit was shut down permanently. After the verdict, Marcus walked out of the courthouse with Tommy, who was now working as his assistant coach at the gym. You think it's really over? Tommy asked. The pit is over. But there'll always be people trying to exploit kids for profit. That's why we keep training them, teaching them to recognize predators, giving them alternatives. Marcus paused. You're part of that now, Tommy. You're proof that people can come back from darkness. 1 year later, Thompson's boxing gym was thriving. Marcus had expanded the youth program, adding life skills classes, college prep tutoring, and job training. The gym had become more than a place to learn boxing. It was a community center, a safe haven, a launching pad for better lives. Tommy Rodriguez ran the beginner classes, teaching kids the fundamentals while sharing his own cautionary tale. His presence was powerful, visible proof of what could happen when you made bad choices, and also proof that recovery was possible. DeShawn Williams had accepted a full scholarship to the University of Michigan, planning to study business while boxing for their NCAA team. He came back weekends to help at the gym, mentoring younger kids the way Marcus had mentored him. The 4 fighters who'd stood with Marcus that night in the warehouse had all found their way to better paths. 1 was in community college, 2 were learning trades, 1 had joined the Army and was currently in basic training. Marcus stood in his gym on a Saturday morning, watching 30 kids train. The space was loud with the sounds of gloves hitting bags, feet moving across canvas, kids encouraging each other through challenging workouts. This was what he'd left the Marines to build. Not just fighters, but character. Not just physical strength, but moral courage. A place where kids learned that real power came from discipline, where exploitation couldn't take root because community was too strong. A visitor entered, an older man in a Marine Corps jacket, ribbons from Vietnam visible on his chest. He approached Marcus with a smile. Staff Sergeant Thompson? Marcus turned, recognized the rank insignia. Gunnery Sergeant. What can I do for you, sir? I'm Charles Morrison, Marine Corps League. We've been following your work with these kids. The way you shut down that fighting ring last year, That's the kind of leadership and courage we want to honor. We'd like to present you with the Citizen Marine of the Year Award. Marcus shook his head. I appreciate the recognition, sir, but I don't need an award. These kids are the award. I figured you'd say that, but you're getting it anyway. Ceremony's next month. Morrison looked around the gym approvingly. You're still serving, Thompson. Just in a different uniform. Semper Fi. Semper Fi, sir. After Morrison left, Tommy approached Marcus. Coach, there's a kid outside. Says someone approached him about underground fighting. Offered him money. He came to us first, like you taught him. Marcus nodded. Bring him in. Let's talk, because this was the work. Not dramatic rescues or confrontations, but day-to-day guidance. Teaching kids to recognize threats, to make good choices, to value themselves enough not to be exploited. Marcus Thompson had been a Marine drill instructor for 12 years, had trained thousands of young recruits to survive and succeed. That mission hadn't ended when he retired. It had just evolved. The gym was his new platoon. These kids were his new recruits, and Marcus would defend them with the same ferocity he'd once defended Marines under his command. Because once a Marine, always a Marine. The uniform changes, but the mission never ends. So now I ask you, have you known a mentor who refused to give up on young people? Someone who used their strength to protect the vulnerable? Someone who proved that service takes many forms, and the most important battles are often fought in gyms, classrooms, and communities? Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the coaches, the teachers, the everyday heroes who stand between kids and exploitation. If this story moved you, subscribe to Open Book Stories. We publish powerful narratives about those who turn their training into protection, their experience into wisdom, and their communities into fortresses against evil. We'll see you in the next story. And remember, the strongest people are often the ones teaching others to be strong.